Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Matt Jarbo. Welcome back to another episode of Patio Commentary. And I just have to ask the question, how many of you guys out there love found footage films, especially those dealing with the creepy and the unnatural? Not necessarily like ghost films, because I'm not always the biggest fan of those, but like zombies, cryptids, folklore things, and things along those kind of lines. I love those kind of movies. And so a few months ago, I heard about this film that was coming out called Frogman. It was coming to Shudder. It was a point of view found footage about a group of filmmakers going off and trying to shoot a documentary about this frogman. And what I didn't know before watching the movie is that the frogman is actually a real urban legend, a real myth in Ohio folklore. So it is known as the Loveland Frog, and it's based out of Loveland, Ohio, which is interesting because this movie draws a lot of its inspirations from eldritch horror, which would be Lovecraftian. So it is kind of ironic to some extent about how the movie is set in Loveland, which is a real place, but it is based around Lovecraftian eldritch horror. So I don't know. I don't know if there was a connection on that. Probably not. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. But the director, Anthony Cousins, is definitely a person who I'm excited to see what he does next, because I really, really, really enjoyed what this was. Before we dive into the stuff with the movie, I do want to just go through what the Frogman is to give you guys a background on this information, on this legend, because we all know Bigfoot, we all know Dracula, we all know Frankenstein. This is something that's small. So according to various legends, and I'm reading this from Wikipedia, according to various legends, the creature was first sighted by a businessman or a traveling salesman driving along an unnamed road late at night in 1955, with some versions of the story specifying the month of May. In one story, the driver was heading out to Branch Hill in that neighborhood when he spotted three figures that stood erect on their hind legs along the side of the road. Each of them were about 3 to 4 feet in height, with leathery skin and frog faces. In other versions of the story, the creatures were spotted under or over a poorly lit bridge, and one held a wand over its head that fired a spray of sparks. So you've got this 3-4 foot tall gigantic frog walking on two legs and wielding a magic wand. Americans Harry Potter, guys. This is exactly what J.K. Rowling should have written, rather than transphobia. But anyway, I'm not the point. The point is, that's the lore. And so that was a big factor in why Anthony Cousins wanted to make this movie. So looking at an interview with him talking about everything, what was fascinating from just a filmmaker perspective, and I totally get this because I'm 42. And when I was 27, almost 28, I moved to Los Angeles. I didn't want to move to LA without having a movie under my belt. So we shot a little point of view found footage called In Search Of. You guys can find, I think those of you who know me know it's iso-themovie.com. It's for free. We shot it in 2 days, and I wanted to have that movie under my belt in order to then kind of prove that I could do these sort of things. And to be honest with you, those are the kind of movies I want to make. And so in this case, Anthony Cousins was coming up on 30. And I know that pressure. I felt that pressure. I was 27, almost 28 when we shot. No, when we shot In Search Of, I was 28. We moved to LA before I turned 28, but I was just after 20. And it doesn't even really matter. But I get it. So he was fast approaching 30, and he was feeling that pressure to make his first feature film. So he came up with this idea about a story surrounding the Loveland Frogman. And this was a lot to do with the fact that this guy just loves cryptids, which is awesome because I love cryptids too. And this is a lesser known type of cryptid. That's what I like about it. That's what's interesting. It's local folklore, about Mothman, Sasquatch, all Chupacabra, right? The swamp ape, all those things. We know about those local folklores because those are the main ones everyone talks about. I live in the Pacific Northwest. Bigfoot is literally our mascot here. So having it be the Frogman is just interesting because it's kind of a little, it's a little different, a little unique, a little wild. And of course, the Frogman's unique feature of carrying a wand is something that was very intriguing to Cousins. Because that is weird. You never really hear about that. You never hear about like the chupacabra, like, operating machinery or having a tool. He's a goat sucker. Bigfoot, like, just walks around real slow. He doesn't have a pair of Nikes or Yeezys, depending on, where he's at and finds in the trash. But that's what I'm talking about. It's such a weird thing, but it's a unique, interesting concept, especially the way that they kind of formulated the story. Now, they decided to make this movie found footage, mostly due to budget constraints. To that, I completely understand. What sells this movie for me in many ways is the compelling performances by the three leads. And especially the fact that this is a love story that's like doomed to fail because it's really about blind ambition and not recognizing what's in front of you and chasing that dragon, if you will. Like, if you look at the Dallas, the main character, and his journey, the Frogman is almost like an opioid. He really is something that is just being sought after. Damn the consequences. And what sucks, though, is that he drags his friends in, under that pretense of getting the gang back together, when deep down he just wants validation. And it's such a relatable story. It really is. It's a relatable story, especially if you've ever worked in the industry or tried getting anything made. Absolutely. So what was funny about this film is that even though the Loveland Frogman is from Ohio, they shot the movie in Minnesota. That's new. I didn't quite realize that. They did that due to time and resource limitations, but they were able to capture the small town similar vibe to Loveland. I do think at one point they had to have gone to Loveland because there's this whole scene where they go into a Frogman merch store. And I just feel like unless because I was watching the movie and they go to the merch store and I'm like, man, they, for a low budget movie, they really invested a lot in merchandise. Like, were they hoping to sell this after the fact? Because maybe that's a good, business investment, right? You upfront some money for merch. You fill out a storefront that makes it look like there's a store, that there's like this popularity thing, and then people see the movie, they like it, they want to get they want to get the Frogman stuff, they want to buy their toy wands off of Etsy or some shit, and they do all that. And I mean, is it a real store? I could only assume it's a real store, but I just thought that was like kind of interesting. For a second, I'm like, did they make this? Because if they did, that's real dedication. But I think because it's an actual folklore in Ohio, that must have been that. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of my take on that one, right? But one of the things with this, as far as challenges go, is that Cousins really wanted to emphasize the difficulty of making a good found footage movie, particularly in maintaining its like authenticity. Because of this, like certain scenes were shot multiple times to achieve the right level of realism. And I think that's like really the benefit of the actors and the benefit of the director. I mean, obviously they're going to be ad-libbing most of the scenes. They're going to have an idea, they're going to have a script and outline, but there's going to be a lot of ad-libbing because of the found footage nature. But what was really good was some of those scenes were like just really compelling on a human level, and the vibe I got surprisingly was like a little bit of Cloverfield with that, because the interpersonal relationships in Cloverfield, I felt like really sold the believability, right? If you can suspend disbelief enough when watching anything, you can vibe with it. You know what I mean? So I feel like in this particular case, when they're having those interpersonal scenes, the stuff that was really kind of like playing up the love story aspect of it, or the two ships passing in a night, or just, the mistake is really the idea there. I just really enjoyed that because you're rooting for these people to get together, despite what they're walking into, despite the craziness of what they're doing. You want that. And I know I am completely all over the place here before jumping into some of the plot. But one of the things they did in order to make sure that there was a good evolution of the story is that the plot evolved significantly during production and post-production. Like I said, you're always going to be kind of ebbing and flowing. Initially, the concept was conceived that the Frogman was just like a big dumb frog. But then they wanted to like give it some agency, give it some heft, some weight, some horror. So then they turned it into a more intelligent, supernatural entity. And of course, then like there was like the Lovecraftian side of things, because Anthony Cousins is like big into cryptids. He likes Lovecraft. It just kind of flows in this particular sense. But that element of it was actually like added in later on in the process. And you don't really feel it. I mean, it definitely has like that third act twist where all of a sudden it just kind of goes off the rails, like right before the end of the movie, but it kind of has to do that. You know what I mean? You have to like give the audience a payoff. For me, as odd as it is to say, if I was watching it and they just got together at the end and didn't find the frogman, and it was just about like the friends you made along the way and like getting the band back together, I probably would have actually been like entirely okay with that. Maybe the older I get, the more I look back on my time in LA, the back of my time in film school, back with my friends before I was in a relationship and before I had kids and a mortgage and everything. And maybe I just kind of long for those days of just getting the friends and like going out and shooting something. Because like one time back in 2009 in San Diego, my friends, again, my trio of friends, the trio of us did a bunch of stuff together, a bunch of short films, documentaries, whatever. We snuck on to an abandoned military base in the mountains outside of San Diego. And we explored for a while without getting caught. And I was like filming the whole thing. And you never knew what was going to come out. You never knew what we were going to find, right? And it would have been like such a creepy setting for a movie. So like, I think I just kind of resonate with this film in some ways. Like I just keep finding myself thinking about it, even though I watched it like a couple weeks ago. I don't know why. It sticks with me. And that's why I really wanted to talk about it, finally doing it. Now, they did choose later on to show the frogman directly, right? Because sometimes in these cryptid movies, they don't really show it, right? Because at the beginning of the movie, you see the frogman in Dallas's, recording. It was grainy. It was wavy. It just wasn't good. It was like kind of legible, but like you could see what it is, but you couldn't really see what it is because this is back in the late 90s and everyone just had like VHS-C or mini DV or things like that. So like you're shooting on analog. Nowadays it's all digital and there's, all this optical zoom stuff and 8K quality and you're going to be able to see the pores on Frogman's ass from like 800 feet away, And so there's an authenticity that you get with that kind of shooting. And the fact that they shot the movie, I think on like 8mm or something like super 8mm or whatever it was, like super VHS, I think, not super 8mm, like super VHS, I think is what they shot it on. And that I can't necessarily say that they did that. I don't know if they did, but there's times that they're shooting with that camera. And then there's times where you can almost tell that they're shooting with, like a better camera. Anyway, they chose to show it, like I said. They also use sound design extensively to convey the creature's presence. That was pretty cool. You hear little noises in the background. Very Blair Witch-esque, which I thought was really good. I really enjoyed Blair Witch having those moments when they're in the tent and the sound around them is like the horror. It's what you can't see, the fear of the unknown. And that's always going to be compelling to anyone who's watching a scary story. It's always what you can't see. It's just beyond reach. And that was really good for this. They really turned this in to a passion project, right? Okay, I got a little bit ahead of myself here on this one. They wanted to make it like lo-fi and they wanted to make it analog and they wanted it to feel like early found footage films. And that's why they shot it using like the video cassette tape. I thought it was like super VHS or mini DV or whatever. It turns out it was actually high 8. And they did that for authenticity's sake, but they didn't shoot it all in like that. They definitely had to find story reasons for using the older technology in modern settings. So you could kind of tell the shots that they're using with that. And the way that the thing is shot anyway, it was just the way it was edited. There are some moments. I mean, I could be reading this wrong, but that is largely my takeaway from it. And so ultimately, they got this movie out there. Shudder put it out, came out back in March. It was reviewed a little while earlier, a couple different places here and there. They all seemed to like it. It got a lot of good reviews, a lot of good talks coming out of it. And, and I heard it was a point of view found footage. And I heard it was about like an old folklore sort of thing. And so I caught it on a whim without really seeing the trailer. And I was just immediately, captivated by it, right? So you got to remember here, it's like, so the movie opens in 1999. They're in Loveland, Ohio. This is Dallas and his family. And, his parents are fighting, trying to get over directions. And that was so realistic too, because parents fight, especially when they're on vacation. The kid's got the video camera to distract him. Sister's trying to do her own thing. But as he's standing outside by this bridge, he ends up getting this glimpse of what appears to be some kind of, anthropomorphic frogman, some kind of bipedal organism very quickly on camera. And then it's gone. And that's what he's got. And so ultimately, he ends up uploading the footage to the internet where it stays for years. People talk about it. They debunk it. They try to, verify it, whatever. And this is where I think one of the more interesting elements of the story comes into play. Dallas himself is a guy who grew up with this. At the age of 10, he caught footage of the Frogman, similar to like the old, Bigfoot tapes, right? That big 60s or 70s Bigfoot, video that we all have, that we all largely know at this point is fake. But he's got it. And he's always kind of lived in the shadow of it. And as a result of that, like, he wanted to become a filmmaker. He went to film school. He met his friends. You got Scotty and Amy, and they're kind of like the three musketeers, all for one for all sort of thing. And they've worked on movies together and shorts together. And there's obviously a connection between Dallas and Amy. Scotty is kind of like the catty, gay friend or whatever, but he's a good cinematographer who hates shooting weddings because honestly, who likes shooting weddings? I freaking hate it. But it's like, as time goes on, Dallas just kind of rescinds into himself, right? He broke up with his girlfriend. He moved in with his sister. Her and her boyfriend want him to move out because he's been there for like a long time. And he's just kind of like a mockery, with some YouTubers. Like, it shows us this scene with a YouTuber who is just like tearing this thing to shreds, right? Because that's, I thought it was kind of funny because a lot of YouTubers who cover this kind of stuff, they don't really know what they're talking about. They just want to be negative for the sake of being negative. But then he like grabs the camera and he's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to find this thing. I'm going to do this, right? He's determined to not be a loser, to prove what he saw all those years earlier and to be that guy, right? To like jumpstart his life. But he's also, you can tell, lonely, and he wants to get the band back together. He wants his friends. So he, recruits Scotty, who's a barista. And also, again, like I said, a wedding photographer. And he's basically like, look, you can come out here and do this. It beats filming weddings, And Scotty wants to get away from it all. He doesn't like to be a barista. He doesn't want to be a wedding photographer. And if you know anyone in LA that's ever been in that position, like, Scotty's entire demeanor in regards to that is very relatable. And I say this as a person who's like done weddings and a bunch of other stuff, especially when I was living in LA. And so then they go and they have to recruit Amy. But Amy, this is where things get a little Cloverfield, you know what I mean? Like, in a good way. Because the opening of Cloverfield was that party. And here they go to a party and it's Amy's going away party. Because she's decided to leave and she wants to move to LA to jumpstart her acting career. She wants to follow that dream. And as soon as he comes calling, as soon as he says, here's what we're going to do, she jumps at the chance to be with him, to be around him, to be around Scotty even. But really it was like, she wants to have one more adventure, one last go, to relive the old days. And I just, that's so absolutely fucking relatable in my opinion. So they decide to head off to Loveland, Ohio to try to do, this documentary about chasing down a cryptid. And one of the things I thought was interesting was the dichotomy between everything, right? Like Amy and Scotty were playing it up like it was kind of more of a joke. Like, they go to this thrift store. Amy finds this red cowboy hat, this blue jacket with these frills, and she puts on a nice old Southern accent. And she's kind of playing it up. She's hamming it up. She's having a good time. She's there with her friends. She's in the moment. She's loving it. But Dallas, on the other hand, man, he's not happy with any of it. And I completely relate to that. He's like, I have a mission. This is what I want to do. Stop fucking around, you guys. Like, get it done. Get it right. Get on board. But that's also going to be like what kind of splits the group in regards to that. Like, it's just kind of like, they want to have fun. They want to be together. And he's like, no, like this is important to me. But they also don't quite understand that. And why would they understand that? They went off like she's going to go to LA to pursue acting. Scotty's a barista, and Dallas is like a laughing stock of the internet because nobody believes that this guy saw what he saw. And so as they start kind of poking around the town, they start, interviewing people. There's one guy that like kept kind of showing up and says, Frogman reads minds. I think that's what he was saying. Turns out later on he was correct, which I thought that was kind of funny. But as like they're trying to like, do the research and kind of make their way through the city, they're obviously hitting all the tourist traps and everything else. And they get kind of played by one of the guys who dresses up like Frogman and tries to like, freak him out in the woods and whatever. He was paid to be out there. But there's one guy that Dallas is eager to talk to. It's this guy named George Hale. And they think that George is part of this cult, right? This cult of people who worship Frogman. And you kind of think he's the bad guy. You start to really think he's the bad guy, right? He's hiding something. His granddaughter is missing, but they don't quite know why yet. And eventually they end up getting, threatened to be run out of town by the sheriff. Get your stuff, get out. You guys are causing too much trouble. And here's where things get really interesting is because they're inside the inn where they're staying. And while they're there, they kind of they hear some noises underground and they find a door going down into like the catacombs, if you will. And Amy's like, I don't want to be a part of this. And they're like, all right, fine, you stay. We're going to go. We're going to finish this. And as they get down there, they kind of realize that the Frogman is real. And there's a cult of people that are worshiping him. And they are basically providing him with brides by giving him women to impregnate with his little frog eggs. His spawn. Now, while that's really cool, and I really dug that aspect of it, my brain afterward was kind of like, well, where did the frog babies go? What do they do? Because he's been doing this for decades, if not longer than that. And so where are the frog babies going? So that part didn't really make a lot of sense to me. Maybe there's a piece there that I missed. I need to watch it again. I'll obviously watch it again. But that part was a little bit weird to me. But what I liked about that was then like they're presenting one of the girls and George Hale runs up with a shotgun and just opens fire, scatters everyone and whatnot. They're running around. Scotty ends up getting like blasted with the goo from the Frogman, and he ultimately starts turning into a Frogman or like one of his minions. And then Amy shows up and they're getting kind of chased around. They think that they're done for. Scotty uses it as a moment to be like, hey, yo, girl, I love you. Which, I mean, to be fair, it is logically the right point in time to do that. Like, I mean, probably, maybe I'm just an idiot. But to me, it kind of felt like it was kind of like logically the right time to do that. Because, I mean, it's in that moment of like, look, we're going to die. All right, I don't want you to not know that I love you before we die. It's a sweet gesture. Maybe not the right time. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe not the right time. But definitely a sweet gesture. And so, like, then he ends up, like, basically going after the Frogman, getting its wand, and then killing the Frogman with its wand. Scotty disappears, runs off into the catacombs. We don't know what happens to George Hale. Amy and Dallas get out, and that's kind of where it ends. And, like, then it cuts over to say, like, the police and the government chose to ignore the footage, calling it a hoax. And that Scotty is nowhere to be found, and that he and Amy haven't spoken since then. And then it cuts to like, non-found footage and actual, like, now they're in a movie theater. They're watching the premiere of this movie at some like late night film festival sort of thing. And they're presenting Frogman as real. The audience is believing that it's real or that it's fake. It's whatever. But then it cuts to Dallas and he's sitting in the back room. And he's clearly like regretting decisions he has made. He's clearly just like, I have made mistakes. And then the camera pans down and you see that he's got the wand. So it's real. And then it cuts out and then it goes to credits. And that's a really, really, really nice way to end it. Cause you're like, oh, like what's going to happen next, man? That's freaking sick. That's freaking awesome. And like, what I like about that is it leaves the door open for more. They've apparently announced the sequel, and that is pretty dope, right? That's pretty dope. I'm excited for that because obviously when they go back in, Amy's going to come back into the fold. There's going to be that tension. Okay. Hopefully with a better ending this time. I'm hoping that they give us that. I mean, I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for a good happy ending. What can I say? I'm a sucker for something like that. I just really am. So hopefully they're going to give us that. And then of course, maybe we're going to get, Frogman isn't dead. His son of Frogman. They want their wand. I don't know what they're going to do. But as far as, let's say, like a cryptid cinematic-esque type universe, if Anthony Cousins wanted to do that, if he wanted to start making these movies that were based in his universe, because if the Frogman is real, then there is more or less going to be everything else, right? Bigfoot, vampires, werewolves, Yetis, Chupacabra, Mothman. All those things could potentially be real. And then, there could be other people that are attempting to figure things out. Because if you have this eldritch based horror around this character, that could mean that other characters, other monsters, other cryptids are also connected to Cthulhu-esque mythos. And I'm a big sucker for like deep lore on these kind of things. I'm a big sucker for those kind of stories, like, expanding. I really hope that they end up actually doing this, right? Like, I really hope that it ends up going that way, because I think, like, I like worlds that feel lived in. I like worlds that feel somewhat real and authentic. And this movie oozes authenticity, right? Like, here's the thing. Like, Dallas is kind of a dick. Okay, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He hates his life. But Amy and Scotty come off as very, very, very likable. They are just good friends who see their other friend is currently down on his luck. And they're like, yeah, okay, we're going to do what we can to help you. We're going to do what we can to make you whole. But it comes at a great expense for them because they didn't really, 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 think about that, because they didn't believe that it was real. That's the other part of it too. They believed maybe like in him, like in his friendship, and they wanted to follow him, to be there for him, but they did not expect it to be real. So I liked it quite a bit. I just really enjoyed it. I'd love to see a lot more. I'd love to talk with Anthony Cousins. He seems a pretty approachable guy. We'll wait to see. The company Terror Vision that is putting out the physical media release of Frogman put out a contest earlier today from recording. This is the 14th of August 2024, and they're seeking people to like talk about their own cryptids, their own local cryptids. And if you submit a story and they like it, you might win a Blu-ray of the movie. And I submitted it. We'll see what happens with that. But obviously, I want to buy it anyway. I think movies like this that sell a creepy concept with the authenticity are the most memorable and the most interesting to watch and engaging to watch, and ones you want to watch multiple times. And I think that might have been one of the big issues of like Blair Witch Project, was like, it wasn't that the cast was bad. It's just they weren't necessarily likable. I was recently watching Blair Witch 2016. And again, the cast isn't really likable. The main guy was okay. His girlfriend was okay. The friends kind of sucked. The other two hitchhikers kind of sucked, or the locals sucked. And it just was like, okay, like you got to have relatable characters put in somewhat of a relatable situation. And this was kind of that. I think we all like a good mystery. We all like a good cryptid. We all like a good paranormal situation. And here they gave us something that's, like, it's not going to knock your socks off effects wise, but you're going to be drawn into the story and drawn into it because the characters are so good that you want to spend time with them. And on that front, I absolutely think that they did a great job with this. So that's where I'm going to leave it today. Frogman, available on Shudder. If you haven't seen it, go and check it out. It will be available on Blu-ray through terror-vision.com. I think, but they're limited though. I'm hoping they just have the standard Blu-ray release somewhere at some point in time, cause it's like $40 or it's like, I think $60 or $70 or whatever for like the deluxe edition. And like, that's fine, but again, it's like an indie film. If you can find it on Shudder, watch it on Shudder. If you like physical media, definitely go for it. And honestly, I look forward to seeing what Anthony Cousins does next. And I'll definitely be there because I really enjoyed this movie. If you guys have any comments or questions for me, please be sure to let me know down in the comment section here on YouTube. If you're listening to this on audio format, please head over to iTunes or Spotify to leave a review. That'd be really helpful. Podio Commentary is entirely fan-funded. If you guys want to sponsor an episode, hit me up. I'll watch a movie you want me to watch, and I'll talk about it. And I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you again. Have yourself a great day, everybody. And I'll see you later. Bye.